Welcome to episode 10 of the Weird, Wild, and Wonderful Illinois podcast. Miranda Bailey Peets. I am the communications director at the Illinois State Historical Society and your host today. And today we are welcoming Dr. Tracy Roberts.
Nope, not a doctor.
Not a doctor,
Nope.
who is a past curator and works on collections for the U.S. Grant Museum and Galena Museum up in Galena, Illinois. And today we're going to talk all things Galena and Jo Daviess County. So welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Miranda.
And you were just saying you've got a lot of other titles. Can you inform everybody about all the things that you've been doing?
Well, I've enjoyed history all my life. I was I'm a senior lecturer emeritus at University of Wisconsin-Platteville, so I taught history for quite a while. I'm
Hmm.
retired now from there, but I've also worked in museums. And so before I was teaching at the university, I was the curator at the Galena Museum that we're going to talk about. It's
Hmm.
today called the Galena and U.S. Grant Museum because we have a lot of history and stories about Ulysses S. Grant as
Hmm.
part of our museum. But you probably know Galena is a pretty important place for Illinois. So I have lots of fun stories I hope your audience will enjoy today.
Yeah. I think one of the funnest stories I just actually recently read, I read a book about Manifest Destiny and heading out west with the Donner Party, and they were talking about, and I'm trying to remember if this is correct, but people were doing wolf fighting at the lead mines up around that area.
I wouldn't say that's a well known story. That's not something you see in many of the primary source documents we have. So I'm not really sure where that came from.
Mhm.
So sorry, I can't comment to that. Don't know, haven't heard that before.
So, what are things that some people might be surprised to learn about Galena?
Well, one thing that's surprising is Galena is the third most visited destination in Illinois after
Hmm.
Chicago and Springfield. So we're a town of only 3,200 people, but we have the third largest tourism destination. There's about 1 million tourists a year come to Galena.
Wow.
So on our narrow little roads and our 3/4 long main street, which is completely under the um, historic register with the national government.
Hmm.
Um, we have been on that since the 1960s. So we've
Hmm.
been really preserving our main street. So the big story about Galena is that we have a big history and we have a big preservation effort that's been going on since the 1960s, which is a long time ago. So we've
Hmm.
been able to save a lot of buildings. That's why when people come to Galena, they get this incredible wow experience because they come into town, go through those floodgates,
Hmm.
right? We're on a river that
Hmm.
floods easily. And they come in and they feel like they've just walked into a 19th century movie set. It's so beautiful. Every building's different. The architecture's so interesting and it's so well preserved.
Hmm.
So we've been really working hard on preservation efforts, which makes Galena so special. But
Fantastic.
our history is really special because um, and we tell this story at the Galena and U.S. Grant Museum, which we opened in 1938, and it was very much a community project. And we're still we're not affiliated with we're not getting money from the county or the city particularly. We are a not-for-profit 501c3
Hmm.
organization, and we've been in business since 1938, telling the stories of Galena. So even in that era, people still had Civil War material and early material, and they gave it to us. So by
Nice.
opening so early, we ended up with a really rich collection of both
Hmm.
archival material and material culture. So the museum allows visitors to learn a lot about our lead mining tradition, Native American stories,
Hmm.
and about our river, the Galena River, which was called the Fever River, but they decided that wasn't a good name.
Hmm.
Right? Do you really want to live on the Fever River? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So in Wisconsin, if you go across the border, because we're very near the Wisconsin-Iowa border, we're very much in that little corner in Jo Daviess County. when you get up there and you cross over that border and you tell someone that you just went on a kayaking trip on the Galena River, they'll reprimand you and say it's called the Fever, because they didn't change the name up there where the river
Mhm.
originates in Wisconsin and comes down through Galena to the Mississippi River. So Galena's right near the Mississippi River,
Mhm.
which makes it a really important port town, especially during the riverboat era. So the steamboat era, flatboats, Native American history, uh, Métis culture. We have Creole culture with Native Americans and French men and women living uh, at the port there. So Galena has a very deep and long history, and we're celebrating our 200 years this year.
Oh,
So we have a lot
fantastic.
of activities going on. Yeah.
So I know one of the things people might, again, like the name of the museum reflects is when you think of Galena, you think of Ulysses S. Grant. And so
Yes.
how much does he kind of permeate into the town?
Um, I think we recognize, I think Grant has, his reputation has certainly been
Hmm.
rehabilitated over the many years. I think a lot of people thought of Grant as the drunk president or the president who allowed corruption under his regime, things like
Hmm.
that. And it was kind of one sided, but there have been more recent biographies of Grant that have really emphasized and shown light on his incredible dedication to abolitionism and making sure that Black people had the vote and
Hmm.
had rights and were not enslaved. And that post Civil War, when he became president, right, he's not just the general in the
Hmm.
Civil War and the winner, but he is also a president for 2 terms. And he makes as many changes as he can to make sure that the gains made during the war and during Lincoln's period of the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments to our Constitution were actually seen through.
Hmm.
So that history had been sort of forgotten in the quest to sort of malign him. So I think we've
Hmm.
come a little bit more even handed understanding of U.S. Grant and his importance to our democracy. So I think we want to keep celebrating Grant. He's not someone we're embarrassed by.
Yeah. Yeah. I know even here in Springfield, it's obviously everybody comes and, immediately thinks of Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
But when I have friends that come to town, I always take them to, well, it's now one of the elementary schools in town, but it has the marker that this is where Grant led his first march from Springfield to Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Great.
his daughter's buried here in Springfield at Oak Ridge Cemetery. And it's, almost that, we're so overshadowed by Lincoln, we don't really celebrate Grant here in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys feel like Galena is more of the spot to really celebrate Grant when towns like
Yeah,
Springfield here kind of don't really recognize
absolutely.
him as much as they should?
Yeah, I think Grant gets his due in Galena. We have a Grant birthday party every year that's put
Hmm.
on by the Historical Society that I was just mentioning. We have a museum,
Hmm.
the Galena and U.S. Grant Museum. So that event is very popular. We celebrate Grant in our museum. You might know, or maybe you don't, but in your 6th grade textbook, when you were learning about U.S. history, you
Hmm.
probably saw a painting by Thomas Nast called Peace in Union. And this
Hmm.
is a huge painting. It's about 9 by 12 feet. It has been hanging in our museum for 88 years.
Wow.
Yes. So we are the custodians with the city of Galena of that painting.
Hmm.
We just took it off the wall for the first time ever. This is a very famous painting. I'm sure
Hmm.
anyone who looks up Peace and Union will find it in a second on a Google search and might
Oh yeah.
remember it from their school book textbook.
Hmm.
But this painting was professionally taken off the wall. We have some professional preservationists and conservationists attending to it because we're actually moving our museum. We're moving for the first time, and we're bringing all of our grant stories with us,
Hmm.
including Peace and Union. So we are building a brand new building near the U.S. Grant Home, which is a state historical site,
Okay.
and our museum will be on the same street in Galena, and just you can just walk there. It's another block or two up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's on the property of a beautiful mansion. And we're using that building right now as offices, but we hope to continue to rehabilitate it.
Mm-hmm.
And the brand new museum's there. And the Peace and Union painting is going to be cleaned
Mm-hmm.
and put back on its original frame, which has some damage. So the frame will be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all being done by, of course, professional conservators. So we're
Yeah.
very excited because we curate one of the most important paintings related to the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And you might recall the painting. It's was done by Thomas Nast. Thomas Nast created like the Santa Claus character. He
Mm-hmm.
created the elephant and the donkey for the two political parties. So he's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty well-known American artist. And he did this huge painting in, I believe it was 1895. He actually painted it, but he was trying to show the moment when Lee surrendered to Grant inside of Appomattox
Mm-hmm.
Courthouse. So that's what the painting's about. And every general is there, including all the Galena generals. So we have 8 generals beside U.S. Grant who were
Mm-hmm.
in the Civil War, and came out of Galena. Not all of them were born in Galena, but it was early days, so a lot of them came out of Galena. So that's one of our claims to fame too, is so many U.S. Generals.
I was gonna say, is that like a record for the most generals to come out of one town? Because
Well,
8
New
seems like a
York might
lot.
have more. New York City might have more, but of a town of this side, yes, I would say.
But
Grant was very loyal to his friends, and he believed someone could do the job, even if they didn't have training at a famous military school. He'd
mm-hmm.
train them up himself because, he went to West Point, and he would train them up. And he was in the Mexican American War, 1848. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, I think he felt he had the training to train others. And so he elevated many people to the position of general over time during the war,
Mm-hmm.
during the 4 years of the war. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of general, wasn't I want to say it was a couple 3 years ago now, but he was finally awarded another star to be on par with General Pershing and George Washington.
Yes, yes, that's the story. Yeah, that's correct. Another story too was that okay, so Eli Parker was a Seneca Native American man who
Mm-hmm.
ended up in Galena, and he was actually an engineer, but he became Grant's secretary, and he was a Seneca Indian. So
Mm-hmm.
again, this sort of Grant's interest in including all people, and he has a very democratic kind of person in his personality. He
Mm-hmm.
was a regular guy, he really believed that if someone had merit, that he would help develop them and grant them, the due that they deserved for their learning and for their expertise. And so he took on Eli Parker as his personal secretary during the war. Eli Parker built many buildings that are still in Galena and still standing,
Mm-hmm.
including our market house and our post office and another lovely building that was a veterans hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so Eli Parker was supposed to be awarded some land, and it didn't happen until really recently. So, our stories of people from the 1860s and those generals, it's not over. They're still finding ways to be honored,
Mm-hmm.
getting their due, being seen as, you know, people who made a difference, not just lost to the history, lost to the vagrancies of time, as they say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people obviously come up to Galena because they're wanting to visit the Grant sites or visit the home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else do they find there that is, maybe surprising to them that they wouldn't expect to find when they're in Galena?
Well, I know a lot of our visitors and are from the Chicago area or Iowa, and
Mm-hmm.
they're used to a fairly flat topography. And when they show up right at the edge of Jo Daviess County from the south,
Mm-hmm.
they find that they're in the driftless area. And the driftless area, which has become much more known in the last 20 years, is a geological phenomenon where, for various reasons that I'm not going to get too deep into right this minute,
Mm-hmm.
um, where the last glaciers skipped an area around the Mississippi River from about Winona, Minnesota, down through the edge of Jo Daviess County, Illinois, and on
Mm-hmm.
both sides of the Mississippi, a little bit into Iowa, all of Jo Daviess County, all of the southwestern Wisconsin counties, up
Mm-hmm.
to about Winona. So that whole swath of area was not flattened by the last ice age and
Okay.
other and previous ice ages as well. So it means that the topography, first of all, we're very near the Mississippi River, so topography is going to be hilly anyway because
Mm-hmm.
you have enormous amounts of water coming through, carving out channels. So you're carving out valleys over a
Mm-hmm.
million years, millions of years. You're carving out spaces. So you have
Mm-hmm.
this very hilly topography, but it's also because we don't have glacial drift. Therefore, we're driftless. So driftless means we don't have glacial drift.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big rocks, the sand, the detritus that got pushed by these massive ice sheets down from the north into
Mm-hmm.
the south. So that made it so that lead ore was closer to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are surprised to learn that Galena was supplying quite a large percentage of the nation's and the world's lead ore during the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So that's
Okay.
a big story for us because Galena, first of all, the word Galena means, it's the Latin word for lead sulfite,
Okay.
which is the ore, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
ore that was being dug up in order to be refined into lead that's
Mm-hmm.
usable. Okay. So that means this huge industry, first by Native Americans, later by French and Native Americans, were in Dubuque, Iowa, which is right across the river from us, right across the Mississippi. The Mississippi plays such a big role in our life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's right there, and it's so profound because it was the highway of the United States Western empires, if you
Yeah.
will. The Spanish, the French, the Europe, the English, the Americans all wanted the land
Mm-hmm.
around the Mississippi River because of the huge potential for moving goods and people in
Mm-hmm.
an easy way before we had trains.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really important factor. And so this lead ore becomes a very important international commodity, of course. It always had been, but it became even more so once the refining process could be such that they could get ore that was really, really usable for bullets, for being re-melted. So they're smelting and melting, right? You
Mm-hmm.
smelt the lead ore to drive off the sulfur molecules and a furnace at about 2000 degrees.
Okay.
Well, getting that kind of technology, it took up till about 1840 before we could do it that well.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, Native Americans really weren't able to smelt lead, which means driving off the different molecules that were damaging the ore. It wouldn't make it so that it wasn't pliable enough. It would
Mm-hmm.
keep it very, it wasn't usable. So anyway, Galena, I think people come to Galena and they see the beautiful buildings but they wonder, why did this happen? Well, it's because of the lead mining industry.
Mm-hmm.
It was our biggest industry. It brought up, thousands and thousands and thousands of lead miners from 1822 to 1860, just tens of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, once you have a big industry, it requires food. It
Mm-hmm.
requires it requires picks and axes and explosive material, and it requires ropes, and it requires someone making big kettles or importing them in so that, you could use that in the lead mine to bring the ore up from, below the surface, going
Mm-hmm.
into mines. You're digging mines. So
Mm-hmm.
all this industry, then you need bankers and you need lawyers and you need all these other people. So I think people are surprised when they see this really well-developed large town that at one time housed almost 14,000 people and is now
Mm-hmm.
down to, under a few thousand. Why is this built environment so large? Well, it's because we were a boom town for
Mm-hmm.
a good 40, 50 years in early American history.
So you talked about a little bit about the population decline from the lead mine days. Is that just through, natural, the mines were closing and people, stopped coming and moving there, or, was there, an outbreak of the Spanish flu that knocked out half the population, or Is that
So
just
what
more of a
happened?
natural demise?
Yeah. So a couple things happened. The lead boom is a boom, so it's kind of an unnatural, huge amount of people showing up all at once, which
Mm-hmm.
requires all kinds of, it creates all kinds of infrastructure issues and housing issues. And one of the studies I've had the most fun with over the many years is studying what I call badger huts. So
Mm-hmm.
these are little stone arch buildings that I've found in the countryside around Galena.
Okay.
Okay. And miners, we have documentary evidence from the 1820s, 30s, and 40s that miners were building these little huts to live in their first couple of years and before they decided whether they were going to stay or not in the Galena area.
Mm-hmm.
So they struck it well. They'd live in this little hut, which was made of undressed limestone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the native stone around Galena, so very easy to get. And they'd create these lovely arched buildings that are about 12 by 9 feet. And they have an apex at the top of the arch, would be about 9 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a hole in the back, and they'd have a little, you could have a little pot stove in there,
Mm-hmm.
a flue, right? So I did a study of those and actually published the article in Illinois Heritage magazine, which is
Okay.
one of the Illinois State Historical Society journals. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got people living very rough at first
Mm-hmm.
because they're mining and that's all they care about, and they're wondering, am I going to strike it rich? Many of them did pretty well. The biggest goal that was to become a smelter. Those who had the smelting furnaces, which cost a lot of money to erect, also the federal government completely controlled mining.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is you couldn't buy the land where there was lead evident. You couldn't buy it. You couldn't
Mm-hmm.
own your own lead mine. You were leasing it. It was a leasing system. It was the United States is one of its earliest attempts to regulate uh, extractive material like mining. They also
Mm-hmm.
tried to do that with salt in the United States at the federal level. So
Mm-hmm.
the government owned all the property around Galena unless it could be proved that it didn't have lead.
Mm-hmm.
Lead runs in veins. So there's places around Galena that doesn't have any lead.
Yeah.
So anyway, over time, this lead mining was doing so well and it was booming, but it's really dependent on price. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an international commodity. So after a while, Spain started getting really involved in lead mining. They started superseding the United States in terms of price. They were able to beat our price. So that was
Mm-hmm.
one problem. The other was the gold rush. We
Mm-hmm.
lost so many of our miners to the gold rush, the 49ers
Mm-hmm.
going overland and trails. And we have all kinds of uh, evidence from different records, whether it's newspapers or people's letters home,
Mm-hmm.
explaining how they went off to, the gold rush. And
Mm-hmm.
so in 49, 50, 51. So we lost a lot of them then, and then they never came back. They stayed in California or they went, in other places out west.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where some of the population dropped. And then after the 60s, after the Civil War, lead mining, all the easy ore was pretty much taken out.
Mm-hmm.
So you needed much more technological equipment to get below the water table. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
to get more of that ore, you're going to need a steam pump. You're getting into some big money now. You're not just a single guy or two, with a pick and an axe going down in there, getting the ore out and bringing it to the smelter guy. The smelter
Mm-hmm.
guy smelts it down and gives the government 10% of the finished product as his fee. That
Mm-hmm.
was how the system worked. So, that's how we lost a lot of the population. But, we became a farming community after that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also always industry in Galena as well, foundries and different kinds of industries. Hmm.
So, what would be some maybe myths about the area that people might believe when they come to visit or have been passed along for generations that just maybe aren't really that true that need to be dispelled about the Galena area?
That's a good question. Um, well, I think Galena has some good reputation and some not great reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So some people might think before they get there that it's just another little town in Illinois or
Mm-hmm.
Southwest Wisconsin area, who cares? But I think when they come there, they're very surprised by how beautiful and intact it is
Mm-hmm.
from the 1860s. I think they feel when they come there that they want to come back.
Yeah.
I hardly met a person who showed up in Galena and didn't say they wanted to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is an idea that when you go to a town that's so small with a few thousand people, it's going to be boring.
Mm-hmm.
Galena's main street is 3/4 of a mile long. It's all on the historic register, so it's
Mm-hmm.
all looks amazing. And then we have so many shops. You can get everything from a t-shirt and do a kind of a tourist thing
Mm-hmm.
to beautiful handmade, handcrafted items.
Mm-hmm.
Galena has always attracted artists. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's an artist community. It always has been. Unfortunately, the rents got so high by the 90s, 2000s that a lot of artists were pushed to the sides into maybe to outskirts of town or to
Mm-hmm.
some of the villages around Galena in Jo Daviess County. But we have always had a huge arts community, and we have an arts center, and
Mm-hmm.
artists are very attracted to that. We have theater. Um, I think they're surprised by how much there is to do every
Mm-hmm.
weekend and even during the week. And we're also a town, ever since I've been involved, um, it's really about live music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have a huge live music presence, a lot of folk music too, not just rock,
Mm-hmm.
but we have blues and lots of folk music and bluegrass, and so it's really a surprise. I think it is surprising that a small town can have so much going
Mm-hmm.
on. You know,
So
um, yeah.
are there any like urban legends that are floating around that,
Well,
people
I
might
think
hear?
one thing that's taken off for the last 20 years in Galena is the ghost tour idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some friends who have a, a ghost tour business.
Mm-hmm.
And this has attracted the paranormal societies around the country to have conferences there and go into some of our old buildings, because for Illinois we're pretty old. We're celebrating our 200-year anniversary right now,
Mm-hmm.
2026. That's pretty good for Illinois. I know you guys way in the south. Kaskaskia has a lot more claim to fame, but for up
Mm-hmm.
here, 1826, that's really early. You
Yeah.
know, so some of the buildings, we have buildings from the 1820s still. And so there's a great interest in the paranormal, in ghosts and ghost hunting. You can go on a ghost tour at night,
Mm-hmm.
with a lantern, the guy with the lantern. You
Mm-hmm.
can hear stories about ghosts. We have photographs that sure look like ghosts. I don't know. So I think that's a lot of fun for people. We certainly have stories of murders and things that people like to recite over and over again. You'll say, "Have you been in the Abley house?" No, I have not, but I know about the Abley house. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so there's interesting sort of the macabre. People love that stuff. Some people do anyway. And so I think there's a lot of fun with that. Absolutely.
So what do you guys have planned this year for the 200th?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. So our Galena Foundation, which is an organization that helps fund important projects around town to keep our beautiful built landscape, and keep they fix the cemetery. They've done a lot of amazing projects for such a small town. They've been spearheading the Galena 2026, and you can go to a website, Galena 2026, and see all the things that are going on. We've
Mm-hmm.
already had a bespoke play that was written by a Galena guy and was performed by many, many Galena residents.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about Galena's history, and it was very well received. And that was in our well-known Turner Hall, which was originally a German Terverein, meeting hall
Mm-hmm.
and gymnasium, and uh, that has been a real center of culture for our town for many years, since the mid 1800s. And so the play was there, set in this beautiful old building that we
Mm-hmm.
have. The thing I'm involved in, which I'm very excited about, which our museum is involved in, is the Galena History Symposium. So
Okay.
I'm a historian and I work with a history museum. And so I wanted to bring together historians from around the country who actually study Galena. Now,
Mm-hmm.
one might think, who would study Galena except for a couple locals? No, no, no.
No.
Galena is really important on the national stage for
Mm-hmm.
Grant, for Elihu Washburn, for Native American history, for women's history.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of stories that, maybe aren't that well known. So I've been putting together with a crew of folks over at the Galena and U.S. Grant Museum. We've been working on the Galena History Symposium. It's going to be May 15th to 17th at our historic DeSoto House Hotel,
Okay.
where Grant actually and Lincoln both spoke from the balcony in the day. That's an
Mm-hmm.
old, beautiful hotel. And our conference will, we still have registration open. We still have a few tickets left. It's going to include 17 different speakers and concurrent sessions, like a
Mm-hmm.
history conference. So you have to choose which talk you want to go to. There'll be
Right.
talks about Grant, his generals. We're doing talks. We have people talking about Native American history. We have a Ho Chunk elder coming to talk about the land around Galena and its importance to Galena spiritual life,
Mm-hmm.
to Native American spiritual life. Um, I'm talking about Sarah Coates Harris, who I research. She was the first female doctor, MD, in Galena.
Okay.
She was also an abolitionist and a Quaker abolitionist and a women's suffrage leader in our
Mm-hmm.
area. And she brought the women's suffrage movement conference to Galena, um, in the 1860s. So,
Okay.
1869. So and I just published an article in Illinois Heritage Magazine about her.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go see that there, kind of get a taste for her. But anyway, the conference is going to be really fun. We've got a special a theater performance that'll be going on. We've got the conference on Saturday all day with talks. And then
Mm-hmm.
Sunday will be people can choose if they want to go on a bus tour to learn all about the lead mine district and Native American history, or they can go on a walking tour for architectural information about Galena's
Oh,
beautiful art.
fantastic.
Yeah, so that's been the main thing I've been working on for the 2026. But there are many other activities, and they can go to Galena 2026 to find them all.
Okay.
Or if they want to know more about the symposium, they can go to galenahistory.org. And
Okay.
that'll be our website that tells you about all of our upcoming activities related to this year and our
And,
great celebration.
and Galena2026.com or .org?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's .org.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other one is galenahistory.org. But I know with a Google search, you'll find it in a second
Yeah.
because it's our thing right now. Yeah, and
And
we're doing a corn boil. Don't forget the corn boil at the end of the summer. That's going to be fun. So,
yeah.
and that harkens back to early days. We haven't had a corn boil here in a long, long time. But some
Mm-hmm.
of the older folks in town still remember the corn boils. And it's harkening back to kind of a turn of the last century fun thing to do in every community around Illinois. I know DeKalb, Illinois always had a corn boil when I went to school there.
For those not from the area, what is a corn boil?
Well, you just boil up a whole lot of corn and get a whole lot of butter melted.
There
And
we go.
people, it's like a big fair, but it's all surrounded, it's all focused on eating corn and enjoying our Illinois heritage of corn growing, which started with our Native American groups. The Muskogee, the
Mm-hmm.
Sauk, the Ho Chunk were all corn growers and did the Three Sisters, the corn, the beans, and the squash idea where they grew
Mm-hmm.
them all together in order to have complete food groups, and with a little meat in there, you can get a pretty good diet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, and if people wanted to come visit the museum, when are you guys
Hmm.
open?
So we're open every day from 10 to 4. We're up on Bench Street. So one block topographically above Bench Street. So Galena's built on ledges, right? Because we're a
Mm-hmm.
hill town. Like I say, everything's really hilly around there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Main Street, but below Main Street is the river, the back street, the Commerce Street, and then the River Street. And we have a
Mm-hmm.
great big levee, which was built after Galena was almost destroyed multiple times by floods from
Mm-hmm.
the Mississippi backing up into our river, the Galena River, the Fever River. which almost destroyed the downtown numerous times until finally we got it together to put up a huge levee
Hmm.
to protect the town and create the floodgates. And that all happened in the 1950s. So we've been more protected. We still have some floods that are serious. I've been involved with some of those,
Hmm.
lived through them, but we're doing better now. Um, Sorry, tell me your question again.
Where can
I'm
they
losing.
find the museum and when they're open?
Yes. Okay, so we're open 10 to 4 every day. We are moving by August, so we will have a brand new museum with all new exhibits. We are currently writing those exhibits as we
Hmm.
speak and creating all the narrative we want to include, and it's a lot of new material. We're bringing out new material that cultural, items, artifacts that haven't been seen for a while,
Hmm.
and bring those up. But the Peace and Union painting is currently being conserved and will be reframed again in that beautiful original frame and then hung. And that'll, of course, be the centerpiece of our museum as it has been.
Hmm.
There'll be a big outdoor space, and over the years, we hope to, create all kinds of paths and, you know, informational trails, things for kids to do, herb garden, Native American garden, and just kind of give them a feel for the whole thing. So we're very
Fantastic.
excited about the move, but the current museum is great. And I think what's surprising about our museum is some people, especially if they're from urban areas, I've been to many, many, many museums. I mean, I love museums.
Hmm.
Lots of people do, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are very they're a lot slicker than they used to be, but we still
Hmm.
have the old cases that came out of old department stores and old 1860s stores. Those are still our cases that we use in our museum.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
you walk in and you get this, you get a very up to date interpretation and understanding of history, but you don't feel like you're in a slick place that was created by a corporate entity. I mean, you feel very like, wow, this is really cool. All wood
Hmm.
floors and wood cases, and it's got a good feel. But unfortunately, that building is 2 stories. You have to climb stairs to get into it. Then it was an old house. It was a house museum.
Hmm.
So then you have to climb a whole bunch of difficult stairs to get this to the second floor. So we're not
Hmm.
ADH compliant, which, is not good. That's not okay.
Yeah.
And we have no parking because we're up on Bench Street. So you can park a couple cars. You can park up there. So if you come to visit us, you can park in the parking lot to the right of the museum, or you can park on the street. But like big buses, they're not allowed up there, those
Hmm.
big tour buses. So we can't do that in our present space.
Hmm.
And we're not HVAC protected enough for our amazing artifacts. We have a huge trove of like Civil War letters. We have all kinds of things that the Grant family owned. We have a
Yeah.
lot of material culture that needs to be better protected. So a new museum is very much what we need. And we're excited
Fantastic.
that we were able to get the grant funding for it and that the
Mhm.
community is supporting it with their dollars.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it was
And
fun.
thanks for talking about Galena and Jo Daviess County.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You too.